Well, friends, I knew you would want to know today, especially, that there are 42 days left till Christmas. You're welcome. Now, I realize that for some of you, this is a cause of great rejoicing because you know you have time to buy Christmas presents. You enjoy going to the shopping malls, crowded like sardines next to people, finding those gifts. For others of you, this comes as a point of terror because you have 42 days left to get your Christmas shopping done, and you're like, oh, I hate this part of it. But no, I knew you'd want to know. And so because I love you, and because I knew you would want to know, especially in a series on strong relationships, I felt like I needed to give you 7 bad Christmas gift ideas. Now, again, these are ideas that you do not want to use, okay? Just wanted to get that clear. And all credit goes to goodhousekeeping.com for these. Number one bad gift is a calendar from a year that's already passed. It doesn't matter if it's got a cute dog or cat on it. If it's from last year, bad gift idea, all right? The second one is a donation to a cause that the person doesn't support. Now, if you give a donation to the NRA while the person has a PETA bumper sticker on their car, that would be funny. But they would probably not appreciate it. So number 2, just don't want to go with that, okay? Number 3, an air freshener. This is not a good Christmas gift. It's sending the message that the person's house stinks. All right? Number 4, cleaning supplies. Nothing like telling the person that your house stinks because you don't clean it. All right? I'm just helping you out. Number 5, a gift certificate for a body wax. I'm just trying to help you out here, okay? Just don't. Number 6, exercise equipment. Now, for some, if they're fit and trim, that might be a good thing. But if you're kind of plump like me, that's actually sending the wrong message. That's saying you're fat and you need help. Okay? Number 7, wrinkle cream. So you have not only said your house smells, it's dirty, you need to pluck your body hair, and you're fat, but now you're also saying you're old. You're welcome. Thank you very much. You're very, very welcome. I wanted to help you out today. So, bad Christmas gift ideas, don't go there. But at least they'd make for some interesting white elephant gifts, right? You know? So as I've been thinking about gifts this week, the thought occurred to me that the gift that nobody really wants is the gift of accountability. It's really the gift that nobody wants. But I tell you, my friends, accountability is a secret to developing strong relationships. You might wonder what I mean. Now, if you're like me, from time to time in your life, around January 1st, there's been the idea that I want to set some resolutions. I want to make some new commitments in my life. I want to do better in my life, you know. And so typically around this time of year, we start thinking about commitments we make to prayer and scripture reading in the new year. We think about our physical health and financial health. We think about, I want to be a better father. I want to be a better mother. I want to be a better husband and wife, and things that I need to do to improve myself in the new year. Now, we make commitments and decisions about a lot of good things, including our relationships, and those are good practices, but it's highly unlikely that we will actually follow through on those decisions and accomplish our goals and make progress without intentionality and accountability. I know it has been for my life. So one of the things that I've learned in my life, maybe you have too, is that decisions alone oftentimes are not enough. We need other people to come alongside us in life and help us move in those directions, don't we? We really do need accountability. We need people in our lives that we give permission to check in on us, to check on our progress, to remind us, this is what you said really matters. But when I look at your life, your actions and your words don't seem to be matching up. What's going on? And so we see this in a lot of different areas of life, right? I mean, this is one of the reasons why mountain climbers, they rope up together, right? This is one of the reasons why athletes, they train and work out with coaches and various different trainers. It's why support groups and recovery ministries structure themselves the way that they do. You see, each of these examples, they are made up of people who have come to the conclusion, I cannot live up to my best intentions on my own. I can't become the best version of myself by myself. And so we actually have, believe it or not, we've got examples of this in our own theological tradition. John Wesley is our theological forefather in the Church of the Nazarene, and he had a beautiful phrase for this kind of this mutual speaking of life and accountability and relationships. He called it watching over one another in love. I like that. Watching over one another in love. You see, when Wesley would go out and preach in the fields or he'd preach in a new city, if there were people who would respond to his message and then receive Christ, what he would immediately do is place them in smaller groups of people for accountability and for discipleship. And before they could enter into these groups, they would actually be asked a series of questions to determine whether or not they were truly serious about entering into this life. I kid you not, these are the questions. Does any sin, inward or outward, have dominion over you? Do you desire to be told all of your faults, and that plainly and clearly? Do you desire that in doing this, we should come as close as possible, that we should cut to the quick and search your heart to the bottom? Is it your desire to be on this and every other occasion entirely open, so as to speak everything that is in your heart without exception, without disguise, and without reserve? In our day and age, we hear those questions and we think, how in the world would anybody want to welcome such stuff into their lives? But in John Wesley's day and age, I kid you not, they received it and they said yes by the thousands. And if you think those questions are intense, after the message, sometime Google John Wesley's questions for small groups. Those are the ones just to get you in. Boy, if you were in a group, boy, it didn't get any easier. So it makes you wonder, why would people willingly welcome such accountability? Why would they willingly welcome such inspection into their lives? Because, you see, they understood that they'd never be able to grow and develop into the people of God without the help of others. They understood that the holy life, my friends, is not just a Jesus and me sort of a journey. It's not. It was something that Wesley called a social holiness, which means that it was a lived out relationship with others that included accountability from one to the other if they were going to live it well. Well, sadly, the commitment to these groups got lost over time, and with it, their transformative power. And it's an ever-present challenge of human nature, isn't it? It really is. It's kind of a natural drift that we have to drift away from mutual accountability, of living a life of inward and outward holiness in relationship with each other. So this morning, I want us to take a look at a story of one of the more notable men in the Old Testament. You know him. He was called a man after God's own heart. And now you know who I'm talking about. That's right, David. That's right. But did you know he was also a man who made some really horrible choices? And he knew the reality of deep personal sin. But the good news is David had someone in his life who was willing to speak the truth and love into his life. Someone that was willing to hold him accountable. And because of that, his failure and sin in his life didn't have the last word. Okay? So I'm taking us to 2 Samuel, chapter 11. We're going to cover a lot of territory this morning, but don't worry, I won't keep you longer than normal. All right? 2 Samuel 11, verse 1, I've got it up here on the screen. Then it happened in the spring, at the time when kings go out to battle, that David sent Joab and his servants with him and all Israel. And they destroyed the sons of Ammon and besieged Rabbah, but David stayed at Jerusalem. Okay? So it's very interesting. Kings go to war in the spring, just like the St. Louis Cardinals go to Jupiter, Florida for spring training. All right? And so David, he says to himself this year, I don't want to go. You guys go. And so he sends Joab and his servants and the army to do what he should have been there leading. Okay? So at this point, it kind of makes you scratch your head a little bit. What does David want? Does David even know what he wants at this point? I think there's something going on inside of David that perhaps he even can't express. He's not an old man by any stretch of the means, but at this point in his life, he's not the golden boy that he used to be. He's got some age on him. And maybe he's at this point where it's kind of like a midlife point where he wants to feel young again. He wants to feel alive. Maybe he's feeling a little restless, a little lonely, a little bored. And that's a dangerous combination. Going on, verse 2. Now when evening came, David arose from his bed and walked around on the roof of the king's house. And from the roof he saw a woman bathing, and the woman was very beautiful in appearance. So David sent and inquired about the woman. And one said, "Is this not Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam, the wife of Uriah the Hittite?" Friends, this is not one of David's better moments. In this encounter, he treats Bathsheba as an object to exploit. He's not looking at her as a person with honor and respect and dignity. Maybe he thinks she's going to be the one to solve his boredom problem. Take away this midlife blah that he's feeling. And so David, he sends again. He sends someone out to find out about her. And he actually receives a mild rebuke. We read it. Is this not Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam, the wife, ding, 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 the wife of Uriah the Hittite? In other words, David, this is somebody's wife. David, this is somebody's daughter. David, is this who you really are? Is this you, David? I believe we can agree here that if David's heart with God was where it needed to be at this point in his life, that statement alone would have stopped him in his tracks. But that's not where David is at, is it? You see, he's not interested in receiving truth spoken in love. He's not interested in accountability. It's interesting. David sent Joab in his place. He sent someone to inquire about Bathsheba, and now he sends someone else to bring her back. David thinks he's in total control. I've got control. I'll send people to do whatever I want. But in reality, he's spiraling further and further and further out of control. He's blind to his true condition. Let's keep going. David sent messengers and took her. And when she came to him, he lay with her. And when she had purified herself from her uncleanness, she returned to her house. The woman conceived, and she sent and told David and said, "I am pregnant." Bathsheba was treated as an object to exploit. There is no record in our story of her feelings, of what she said, if she had any option to say no. But what we do have is the word or the phrase, took her. So in the Hebrew, the word translated took, it It gives us the picture of being taken by the hand, but it has another picture that it communicates. It gives the picture of being captured. And I'm inclined to believe that this is the latter, not the former. This is, my friends, don't mistake it, is an abuse of power. But in verse 5, we find Bathsheba sending something to David. It's very short and simple. I'm pregnant. Now David, he has to deal with a different form of power, one that he doesn't have control of, the consequences of his choices. So David, he springs into action. He's got to manage this situation. He's got to do damage control, right? But in reality, what David is doing is he's spiraling further and further out of control, further and further into sin. This is what our text says. Then David sent Joab, saying, "Send me Uriah the Hittite." So Joab sent Uriah to David. When Uriah came to him, David asked concerning the welfare of Joab and the people and the state of the war. Then David said to Uriah, "Go down to your house and wash your feet." And Uriah went out of the king's house, and a present from the king was sent out after him. But Uriah slept at the door of the king's house with all the servants of his lord, and did not go down to his house. Now, when they told David, saying, "Uriah did not go down to his house," David said to Uriah, "Have you not come from a journey? Why did you not go down to your house?" Uriah said to David, "The ark and Israel and Judah are staying in temporary shelters, and my lord Joab and the servants of my lord are camping in the open field. Shall I then go down to my house and eat and to drink and to lie with my wife? By your life and the life of your soul, I will not do this thing." Then David said to Uriah, "Stay here today also, and tomorrow I will let you go." So Uriah remained in Jerusalem that day and the next. Now David called him, and he ate and drank before him, and he made him drunk. And in the evening he went out to lie on his bed with his Lord's servants, but he did not go down to his own house. This is not some of David's highest points of his life. And as you read through the passage, can you sense the frustration that's building in David? He's trying to cover up what he has done by having Uriah sleep with his wife. He might have even been trying to capture Uriah in a technicality. For you see, according to Deuteronomy chapter 23, 9 through 11, soldiers who were on active duty were to refrain from sexual intercourse. But David vastly underestimates Uriah's character. And that's ironic in itself. For you see, what has happened is a convert of foreign ancestry is more righteous than the king of Israel. And sadly, a drunk Uriah is more pious and righteous than a sober David at this point in his life. Well, having no success, David then gets back into the sending mode. Let's keep going. Now in the morning, David wrote a letter to Joab and sent it by the hand of Uriah. He had written in the letter saying, "Place Uriah in the front line of the fiercest battle and withdraw from him, so that he may be struck down and die." So it was, as Joab kept watch on the city, that he put Uriah at the place where he knew there would be valiant men. The men of the city went out and fought against Joab, and some of the people among David's servants fell, and Uriah the Hittite also died. Friends, David sent Uriah to the front with his own death warrant in his hand. And David's actions here, they serve as a warning to us all. Sin, suppressed and concealed, always leads to more sinning. And left uncontested, my friends, it will always lead to a hardened and callous heart. This was the case with David. Look at what he says in verse 25. Then David said to the messenger, thus you shall say to Joab, do not let this thing displease you, for the sword devours one as well as the other. Basically, David just said, this is a soldier's fate. We all have to die sometime. Knowing full well he was the one that sent the message in the first place. So David, he's thinking, I've got this controlled pretty good. I've controlled this affair really well. You see, he thought the real danger was that someone would find out what he did. But the true danger, friends, for David's life is that no one would find out what he did. That no one would hold him accountable. That no one would remind him, David, this is not who you are. We don't know how David lived in this state. We don't know how long he was there. It was at least as long as at least 2 trimesters, maybe a little longer. But in other words, David, he's gone months, my friends, pretending to be somebody that he's not. And all the while, he's living with this secret of unconfessed and unrepentant rape and adultery and murder. And each day that passes, my friends, he becomes more and more callous, and he becomes more and more comfortable with what he has done. But fortunately for David, one day God decides to go into sending mode. Our text says, chapter 12, verse 1, then the Lord sent Nathan to David. Now, up to this point, David had been playing God with people's lives, with Bathsheba, with Uriah, with Joab, the army, all of Israel. But now God is the one who does the sending. He sends David a prophet by the name of Nathan. And Nathan, he's going to hold David accountable to live into who he really is. He's going to hold him accountable to live into and to live up to his true identity. Oh, David, all those Psalms you wrote, that's who you are. That's who you are. So before we go on, though, I want us to think about this for a second, about the risk that Nathan was taking. David has already killed one person to cover up his crimes. Where he's at in life right now, it wouldn't take much to do it again. It's worth considering that Nathan loves David as a friend. You see, Nathan, as we learn in the story he's going to share, he's given a lot of time and thought to how he's going to approach the king. And so Nathan, he knows that after months of hiding, David's heart is going to be hardened. It's going to be resistant to the truth. So what he's got to do is he's got to capture David's heart here. He's got to awaken David to who he really is at his core. And I mention this because, friends, there are some people in life, and sometimes, unfortunately, you even run into them in the church. There's some people who love to go about correcting people and criticizing people under the banner of truth. They blast away people, they pass judgment in a spirit of superiority, and they assume that they're a prophet. And that's what prophets do. But friends, can I tell you about real prophets this morning? What burns deeply in the heart of a true prophet is a deep love for God, a deep love for people, and a deep desire to set people free with the love of God and the truth of God. You see, holding other people accountable doesn't mean that we get to see ourselves as taking God's place in their life. And accountability, it's a tool, you see. It's an invitation to relationship that we offer to other people, you see. And we offer it to others in order that we might experience love and growth in ways that we never could on our own. So Nathan, he's really upset with what David has done. But he loves David with a love that burns even deeper. And so with a lot of artistry, Nathan tells David a story. It's in our text. Then the Lord sent Nathan to David. And he came to him and said, there were 2 men in one city, the one rich and the other poor. The rich man had a great many flocks and herds. But the poor man had nothing except one little ewe lamb, which he bought and nourished. And it grew up together with him and his children. It would eat of his bread and drink of his cup and lie in his bosom and was like a daughter to him. Now a traveler came to the rich man, and he was unwilling to take from his own flock or his own herd to prepare for the wayfarer who had come to him. Rather, he took the poor man's ewe lamb and prepared it for the man who had come to him. Then David's anger burned greatly against the man. And he said to Nathan, as the Lord lives, surely the man who has done this deserves to die. He must make restitution for the lamb fourfold because he did this thing and had no compassion. You know, it's interesting. It's so easy to follow in David's footsteps here. For us to get all fired up about somebody else's sin and completely forget about our own. It's easy to do, isn't it? But David's heart, make no mistake, his heart has been awakened. That false self that he's created and the true self that lies buried underneath, friends, it's been awakened. This is a moment of accountability. And Nathan looked straight into the eyes of the most powerful man in the country, the one who could have him put to death for speaking against him. He's speaking to the one who has killed someone already to keep a secret. And then Nathan said to David, you are the man. Nathan basically tells David, Dave, this is your story. This is the depths to which you have fallen, Dave. You see, Nathan loved David so much, he was willing to risk his own life so that David could have a mirror for him to see himself, to see how far he had gone away from who he really was. At one of the most important moments in his life, God sent him Nathan. Now, we don't know how long it took for David to respond. We don't know what was going on in his mind. But what we do know is that in those moments, a miracle of grace happened. The real David, the man after God's own heart, returns. Verse 13, then David said to Nathan, I have sinned against the Lord. My friends, that is the power of a spirit-guided, love-motivated accountability. And while we rejoice in the outcome recorded for us in Scripture, it makes me wonder, though, I wonder how David's life would have turned out if he hadn't had a Nathan. What we do know is that David had gone 6, 7, maybe 8 months without repentance, without anyone speaking into his life and calling him back to his true self. Without Nathan in his life, David probably would have continued to spiral and spiral more and more out of control. And so I believe one of the takeaways for us from this story today is that without a Nathan in our lives, or think of it this way, as someone who has someone else speaking lovingly and accountability into our lives, we have a way of drifting off course. We have a way of just the normal progress of life sometimes of forgetting who we really are. We do. And I don't believe David, a man after God's own heart, I don't think he ever set out to become a rapist, a murderer, an adulterer. And more times than not, most of us, we don't intend of making a mess in our lives, do we? Not very many people in the world start off their day by thinking, I'm just going to go do those things today. It's on my to-do list. It doesn't happen that way. But they do happen. Why? Perhaps it's because we've never given anybody else permission to speak into our lives, to speak the truth in love. And when we have nobody to answer to, when we have no one holding us accountable for living into our real selves, hold us accountable for living into our real values, the practices that we hold most deeply, we become very vulnerable. And we can become very dangerous to ourselves and to people all around us. So you see, my friends, as I started off the message, I conclude with it. Accountability is a secret to strong relationships. Because there will be very, very few people that you will be closer to than those that you give permission to lovingly speak into your life and hold you accountable in love to who you really are. I'm going to welcome our worship team to come back up as I kind of bring this message to a close. And as we come to a close, I just want to ask you very, very simply, who watches over your life in love? Who watches over your life in love? If you don't have someone, I would like to encourage you to begin prayerfully asking God to show you someone that you can go to and ask to hold you accountable. Now, this person, they need to be a person of spiritual maturity, make no doubt about it. They need to be a person that can keep a confidence, a person that has discernment that you can trust. Not just the first person off the street, obviously. But at the end of the day, my friends, we cannot become all that we and God want us to be on our own. At the end of the day, Dr. Reuben Welch was right. We really do need each other.